morning. Good morning. Good morning. Y'all, we've made it to another Monday morning. I hope everybody had a wonderful week last week. That you had a wonderful weekend. And I hope that everybody that has been in the path of these storms that we've had lately is doing okay. So, today, jury selection is supposed to start in the Sarah Boone case in Florida. They're saying that jury selection should take a couple of days. And I think the last news report I watched suggested possibly that opening statements would probably begin Wednesday. I don't know. I don't think that jury selection is going to be televised. Because there's really a big chance that jurors could be shown on TV, and that's not acceptable. So, we'll see. But I want to play this one stream from Court TV, so we can kind of all be caught up. So
let's turn to our top story this morning. As Sarah Boone's going to be back in court next Monday after jury selection was delayed due to Hurricane Milton. Court TV's Kelly Craft is in Orlando with the latest.
Good morning, Julie. The murder trial for Sarah Boone, the woman accused of suffocating her boyfriend in a suitcase, is delayed yet again, this time because of a hurricane. The mayor of Orlando has declared a state of emergency. The judge addressed the court this morning.
Due to the potential storm and the ramifications of it, the court is going to postpone jury selection in this matter till Monday, October 14th at 9 a.m.
Jurors were sent home and told to return on Monday. Another big development in this case, Sarah Boone has rejected a plea offer from the state. Let's listen to the judge discuss this with her.
15 years to a lesser included charge of manslaughter.
Ma'am, understanding the state's offer, do you wish to accept or reject the state's offer to resolve this case?
Reject.
And you heard Sarah Boone there rejecting that plea offer in which she would serve 15 years behind bars, pleading guilty to manslaughter. But now the trial will proceed on Monday, barring any other unforeseen circumstances. Julie, that's the latest from here in Orlando. Back to you.
All right, our thanks to Kelly Craft for that update. Now let's dig in some more because we got some other news on Monday, not just the delay of the trial, but a motion filed by the prosecution. They are still trying to stop Sarah Boone from entering in that battered spouse syndrome defense as part of an overall self-defense, affirmative defense case. Let's bring in our guest now, the Director of Prosecution Projects at Florida International University and former homicide prosecutor Melba Pearson, and Court TV digital producer, and we like to say our resident expert on the Sarah Boone case, Lauren Silver. Good morning to you, ladies. All right, Lauren, would you start us off? You saw this motion hit the docket on Monday. You dug through it, the sum and substance of it. Would you kind of walk us through what the state is saying, please?
So the large part of it is that the state is requesting that the judge to review the use of battered spouse, and also perhaps because the judge has already said that battered spouse can come in as a defense, say, well, at least Sarah will have to take this stand to set some foundation before introducing any kind of evidence, any kind of past bad acts. What's really interesting about this motion is it was written after the state deposed the expert for Sarah Boone. These are the forensic psychologists who are going to testify to battered spouse. And so we're learning a lot more about what she said happened that night, allegedly to the doctors, I would assume, including that she allegedly admitted to beating the suitcase with a baseball bat once George was inside of it, which is not something we knew before.
Right, Lauren, right. Let's talk more about some of these details. So I understand that he was able to poke his fingers out of a little opening in the zipper, and she is said to have hit his hand with a wooden bat in the house.
Yes. So apparently he chose to get in the suitcase. Again, this was a game of hide and seek. The prosecutors did suggest that perhaps Sarah misunderstood the rules of hide and seek, but he got into the suitcase. She helped zip him in. He had these fingers that were able to stick out. And at some point he began to complain that he couldn't breathe. And this enraged her because prosecutors say it reminded her of when she felt she couldn't breathe because of his behaviors. And so she flipped the suitcase over, and then she hit his hands in the suitcase with a baseball bat.
Wow. Lauren, this is brand new information in that motion. How about it? It's been since 2020 we've been talking about this case. The other thing in that motion we learned is the victim was only 103 pounds. I always wondered, how could he get inside the suitcase? That's the question I probably get the most from people, because you think, how could a man fit in a suitcase? I have no idea, didn't see him get in. He was very small, 103 pounds. Okay, so prosecutors are arguing that as a matter of law, what Sarah Boone told the doctors who evaluated her doesn't entitle her to get this evidence in, evidence of the prior violence, evidence that she was afraid of him, all of that. Melba Pearson, let's talk about this legally. The judge gets presented with this. Now he's got some more time to consider it, as you know, because of Hurricane Milton. Tell me, how do you think the court should assess this motion?
Yeah, so good morning, Julie and Lauren. And this is a very tough situation because you don't want to have, the judge doesn't want to make a decision that's going to end up being appealable once, let's say, a conviction is attained in this case. If he makes the wrong decision and excludes that evidence, then that could be grounds for an overturning of the conviction at the appellate level if there's a conviction. However, there has to be something to substantiate these claims. She can't just say battered spouse syndrome and there is no documentation, there's no witnesses, there's no other, hospital records, something to document that she had been abused in the past. And usually when it comes to battered spouse syndrome, it's a matter of you've got triggered by something the person did. It does not necessarily have to be the person beat me in this instant and I responded in kind. And that was and then I'm using the defense of battered spouse syndrome. That's one scenario, but that's not the only scenario. It could be a word track. So let's say, despite the victim being 103 pounds, giving the defendant the benefit of the doubt, which I'm not saying I believe her story, but giving her the benefit of the doubt, it is possible for a smaller man to be abusive to a larger person just because of the dynamics of domestic violence, right? So the size alone isn't necessarily going to be the issue. But again, the way that she went about it, this was luring him as part of a game into a suitcase and then not letting him out, filming it, torturing him, beating him. None of that is consistent with how most people react under the context of the battered spouse syndrome. So the extra steps she took looked more like torture than I was in fear for my life, therefore I reacted in this manner, as well as the statement she made to law enforcement where she was like, oh, it's a game, I can't believe, oh my gosh, not, oh my gosh, I was afraid he was going to hurt me, therefore I had to act in this manner. So I think there's going to be some very clear guardrails that the judge is going to put in place, and she's not going to be able to present a treasure trove of evidence around the battered spouse syndrome. That's not going to happen.
Right. Such a great legal explainer for us, Melba. Thank you for all of that. I want to share a clip. You both saw this when Sarah Boone decided to testify at her suppression hearing. And she let it out that she was still intoxicated at the time of that interview. I think her logic was that she wanted to make it seem, she was under duress, coerced, not in the right frame of mind. But this might also affect the defense. Melba, I want to come to you on the other side. Let's take a look.
I was in shock. I was traumatized by the situation, and then trying to focus on everything that was going on at my home. I was hungover. I was still, I believe, intoxicated to a degree.
Okay, so Melba, you've already taught us that. So when we think about battered spouse syndrome coming in Florida, we're thinking about a self-defense case where the decedent would be doing something to threaten or, as you said, cause something to be triggered in the victim where they would, oh my gosh, feel the need to defend themselves. Here, this is an accident. So the state is saying, look, you can't assert it here. This was accidental. You've said it was accidental before. How does the intoxication get woven into this picture, Melba? Because she did make a lot of statements, and in the motion, the state is very concerned about her wanting to change her story. And Lauren, I'm going to come to you on that in a second. But Melba, how do you think the intox plays in for both sides, please?
I think the intoxication is going to be critical in terms of state of mind, because again, it's not to say you can't be in fear when you're intoxicated, but the extra steps that she took and the way she behaved and the way she told the story afterwards definitely negates anything in terms of her being fear. And the prosecution is going to use that as in, this was a drinking game. They both consensually entered into this. There was no abuse. And then she just went to the next level, became cruel, and she was the one abusive, not necessarily the victim.
Right. Melba, thank you for that. Lauren, would you remind us, please, the statements that Sarah Boone made? We know in this motion, the state kind of notes the ever-evolving stories, and they hint at, by the way, Judge, she's probably going to change it again when she testifies. Would you kind of take us back and refresh us, please?
Yeah, I mean, when this started, this was I don't know how this happened. I don't think he has a medical condition. This was just a game. I went to bed. And then it became, I never imagined this could happen. This was clearly an accident, and I'll never drink again. I mean, how could this have happened? I never could have expected this. And when detectives pushed back on that, it quickly began to morph into I was scared. What if I let him out? Then he could hurt me, which is a very different story than I went to bed and I thought he could get himself out.
Exactly.
It becomes an active decision rather than a passive one.
Mm-hmm. Right, Lauren. The prosecution notes that in the motion. Melba's nodding. It's like there was a change, and you noted this as well legally, Mel. But at first it was a game, and then it became, oh, I'm mad. I don't want you to breathe. Just like I feel like I can't breathe when you cheat on me. She's taunting him in the video, saying something to that effect. We'll leave it here for now, but this is something we're going to be watching as we'll see what the judge does in the way of a ruling on letting that defense in. Next Monday, it all begins. Melba, you're going to stay with us. Lauren Silver, thank you for all the information. We'll be talking soon on this.
Well, it looks like today's the day that jury is going to be selected. There was...
Let's turn to our top story this morning.
Another video I wanted to share. Where'd it go? This was last week. Oops.
All right, the hurricane forming named Milton has pushed the Sarah Boone case. The judge just announcing it a few moments ago that jury selection process, which was going to be starting this morning, has been pushed until next week. Let's watch the judge.
Thank you so much for letting me know your positions. As we just discussed, as of 10:46 this morning, the chief judge has decided to close all courthouses due to Hurricane Milton, both Wednesday, October 9th and Thursday, October 10. The court anticipates that operations will return to normal on Friday, October 11th, but that's due to the court's continued close monitoring of the impacts of the storm. Due to the potential storm and the ramifications of it, the court is going to postpone jury selection in this matter till Monday, October 14th at 9 a.m. Mr. Owens, please provide the court the order with regard to the clothing and shoes. and we'll address that as necessary. As also requested, please provide my judicial assistant your cellular telephone numbers before you leave today. With that, the court is in recess, and we will see you all on Monday, October 14th. Thank you. Ms. Boone will be returned to the custody of the Orange County Jail pending jury selection. We're off the record. Thank you.
All right, there it is. Sarah Boone was supposed to sit and watch jury selection take place today. Now, earlier this morning, she had a chance to take a deal. The state announced in open court that they were ready to give her a deal of 15 years if she pled guilty for the lesser charge of manslaughter. Right now, she's facing a second-degree murder conviction, which has a minimum of 22 years. Here is that moment where Sarah says no.
Do you understand that if we were to proceed to trial in this matter, and if you were found guilty, the lowest permissible sentence that the court could levy in this case would be 22.5 years in the Department of Corrections? Do you understand that? Do you understand the state's offer to resolve this case? Yes. Okay. The offer is
15 years to a lesser included charge of manslaughter, with the understanding that she would serve 85% of that sentence.
That's up to the department and her behavior, but that is my understanding of the section.
Ma'am, understanding the state's offer, do you wish to accept or reject the state's offer to resolve this case?
Reject.
Oh, man, she rejected that offer. That's 8. You heard there, it was 15, but she would serve 8. And she's already done, I believe, 4 in jail, go ripping through these 9 attorneys. She's 4 years away from getting out if she accepted that deal. And she said no. Oh, Deputy Public Defender in Los Angeles County, Philip Dubay, is here. He's been sitting next to clients for decades, listening to their offers and rejections and this. Where does this stand? I mean, this to me seems like a no-brainer. Take it, take it, take it.
Suitcase Sarah is a classic example of why we have a job. Okay, Ted, listen, she's the type of client where you need to double team her, meaning you bring in at least 2 lawyers from your firm or your office to sit her down and tell her to knock off the cock and bull and take the deal. Because when she gets out, she'll be 56. She'll have a whole life ahead of her. You know, she's already been in for 56 months. I believe she got arrested on this in February of 2020. So she'll still be a relatively young woman. Worse yet, when you do the legal analysis, I think the best she can hope for from the jury is a manslaughter. They define it as follows. All they have to do is prove that she committed an act, not in self-defense, that caused death. That's it. All they have to do is hit the play button and show the jury that video of him struggling for breath in that suitcase, and they've basically proven of manslaughter beyond a reasonable doubt. So what does that get her? The 15 years that they're offering now. Homegirl needs to take the deal and shut up and go do her time.
Yeah, because the chances of a second, while obviously the state is a little bit worried about their case because it is complex, that video, she's not only listening to him, she's taunting him. And there's only 6 jurors that are going to be deliberating in the state of Florida. It's not a 12-person jury. You could just feel this thing going south very quickly, especially if, like they've articulated, their defense is going to be battered spouse syndrome.
Yeah, the only way out of this is to prove some form of self-defense. Because again, they have to prove she committed an act that caused death that was not excusable, meaning it was not in self-defense. And if they think that a battered woman syndrome expert is going to save the day, it's very risky. I would rather take my 15 with all the credit I've got in and be out at age 56 rather than risk life in prison. But she's willing to roll the dice. It's really unfortunate. And this is, again, a classic example of why a few attorneys need to sit her down and explain the risk. And then you can note your files, say she's been advised, and if she goes down on it, she has nobody to blame but herself.
And now it makes sense that she's gone through all these attorneys. We had sort of speculated that the state maybe was offering and she was rejecting, and this, and I think that the state was very eager to get this out on the record and into the public forum. Well, the hurricane Milton storming towards, or basically Orlando. Now it'll drop in intensity by the time it gets inland into Orlando. The court was expecting Wednesday and Thursday to have the courthouse closed. This move, though, to stop the jury selection process on Monday and restart it next Monday, I guess that is to eliminate the possibility that you pick a juror, their house is leveled, and they can't serve.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're fortunate out here where I live. We don't have to worry about having to batten down the hatches whenever it rains or you get a windstorm, you know. But unfortunately, most of the country is not like that. And to be fair, nobody really knows where the jurors live or the jury pool. It could be possible that even though the courthouse is inland, that they live closer to the ocean and they need to get home and board up their windows, make arrangements for their pets, pack things up, put sandbags out and get ready rather than sit serving their civic duty as a juror, you know. So, and by the way, the players in the justice system likewise need to get home and take care of business. The judge, the court reporter, the clerk, a counsel, you know, they all have obligations at home that they've got to contend with to avoid tragic type destruction from what appears now to be a Category 3 or a Category 5 hurricane. You got to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a prudent decision for sure.
The problem is I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
When did you do CPR?
This morning, when I found it.
Before you called?
Yes!
It's 1 o'clock right now.
I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still.
The body camera video of Sarah Boone, if you look closely, you see the date of that. This is, you know, the morning that 911 is called and Orange County Sheriffs respond. It was 2/24/2020. Now, finally, Monday, attorney number 9 will be representing her and the trial will begin right here on Court TV. Now, we've got an update because Sarah Boone made some motions, pretrial motions with her new attorney prior to the beginning of this trial. Let's go through some of them. First, she had a request to have her hair done. And yes, that's a check. Yes, you can have your hair done, Sarah Boone, at trial. Request to wear civilian clothes. Check. You will get to wear your civilian clothes. Okay, request to have her makeup done. Not happening. They had to draw the line somewhere. It seems like corrections had a little problem with that. Can't have it done. So she'll have her hair done, but she's not going to have the professional makeup artist come in. Request to have shackles and restraints removed during the trial. Yes, that would be prejudicial. And finally, this is the big one, folks. Request to have her interrogation video suppressed, kept out of evidence. It's coming in. It is coming in, folks. The interrogation video where she makes a lot of statements. She's all over the place. And in statements that may be considered inconsistent with the defense in this case. So Sarah Boone was on the stand on Wednesday for this pretrial motion here, discussing her mindset going into the police interrogation that she wanted tossed out of the case.
I was in shock. I was traumatized by the situation, and then trying to focus on everything that was going on at my home. I was hungover. I was still, I believe, intoxicated to a degree.
Well, the one thing, I mean, this is the first time I've seen her speak, and she seems relatively, like normal, right? She doesn't seem like something's off there. which may help her at trial. I took that away, but the explanation the judge wasn't necessarily buying as a basis to suppress it, so it's coming in. So I want to play for you some moments from that interrogation that the prosecution may want to use and the defense may not want the jury to consider.
But why is he saying I can't breathe, and why is he pushing on it as if he can't get out?
And it doesn't show a hole.
There's no hole. There's no fingers. I don't see his fingers. There's no hole.
I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, I don't know, like, what you want me to tell you.
I'm just showing you. I'm just telling you what we see and what we've heard from the other video.
I understand.
He's begging for you to let him out. You're laughing in the beginning, and then in the end, it sounds kind of like
No, it's not malicious.
Well, saying
It's not malicious.
Then what is that?
What does mean to you?
Well,
so it goes from funny to no longer funny, but you're the only one laughing.
But I didn't think that he was, like, panicky. Like,
So pushing up on a suitcase saying, Sarah, 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 I can't breathe.
George has done that in the past before, too, where it's just like he thinks that he's woe is me kind of thing, where it's like,
He's never been locked in a suitcase. That's where he couldn't get out. So
it's kind of, I thought it was the boy crying wolf kind of thing.
Okay.
And again, my plan.
But nowhere in there is he laughing, is he joking. He is begging. And you're the only one laughing.
Okay.
And you're the only one saying derogatory comments. Like you're mad.
No. Please I don't mean to sound negative, and I don't know if I can say this, but like it's like you guys are kind of trying to like feed me. Like,
no, I'm just trying to show you a video that you no longer want to watch because you probably don't want to know the outcome of how and what you said.
Well, I know what.
You know what's on that video now?
No.
You remember making that video?
Oh.
Why don't you remember making the video?
Probably because we had been drinking.
But you weren't drunk.
No. Just because I went upstairs and just because you're drunk doesn't mean that you
times that you were not drunk. You said that you had your wits about you. You said he had his wits about you.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you don't like not having your wits. In my experience, if somebody cannot remember doing something to the extent of making 2 videos and taking a photo, they are intoxicated.
Okay. My plan was not to go upstairs and go to sleep. My plan was not to, he'll be up here any minute.
But you willingly went upstairs and went to sleep. No one forced you to go upstairs and get ready for bed.
My plan was also to leave him in the suitcase.
So why didn't you take him out?
Because I went upstairs and then I fell asleep.
Okay, her defense now is battered spouse syndrome, self-defense. That's where the case is going. That's where the focus of the defense will be. Paulette Lofton, how much of a problem is this 2-hour interrogation, pieces like this? Does it fit with the defense, or does it become a problem for her?
I don't think it fits at all. So I think it's a large problem that those interrogations are going to be played for the jury. It's clear if we believe the facts as she presents them in those interviews, she at least had the upper hand at some point. She had him in a suitcase. He was unable to get out of the suitcase himself. He's begging her for help, and she took it upon herself to not call the police and tell them, you know, I'm finally done taking him back. This is the abuse I've been suffering. She went upstairs and went to sleep. It's clear that she's also making inconsistent statements, whether she was intoxicated or she wasn't intoxicated. I think that interview is really going to hurt her. I agree with you. I think she did present well in that hearing that they had earlier this week, and she seems to be calm and listen to the questions and answer them appropriately. But I think the jury's probably going to give a lot of weight to those interviews in the first hours after she calls 911.
I agree. Ben, the video is so powerful because you can hear George Torres suffering. Like any human hears what he's saying. You're like, this is a man obviously in distress. And she's not really acknowledging that. She literally said, he's always like, woe is me. George is dead. I mean, he suffered a horrible death, And afterwards, she's saying, oh, he's always going, woe was me. That's a bad look.
Yeah, it's horrific. And just even the visual image of the suitcase and imagining somebody in that tiny area, it must have been torture for him. I think I agree with Paulette. I think it's absolutely damning and completely inconsistent with battered spouse syndrome.
So, Bernarda, and one thing that the attorney James Owens has said is, and he said it in court, he said it on this show, that I think a lot of focus will be about what happened before he got in the suitcase, and then also what happens before the video camera begins recording. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's got to come from her mouth, right? She has to testify in this. I don't see any way to attempt to make a case without her testifying.
Absolutely. So Sarah Boone does plan to present this defense of battered woman syndrome or self-defense. She's going to have to take the stand. So the big issue for her is, number one, is that she gave prior statements. She has the videotape statement. She has the statement from when the officers first encounter her. So she's going to be confronted with both of those statements and then what story she's going to give while on the stand. So if you look at all three of them, right there, you have a lot of inconsistencies. And when you're trying to evaluate credibility, one of the main factors that you look at is are there any inconsistencies? Has she said this story before? Did she first report it when she had the first opportunity? For example, when the officers first came to her, and they're going to find that she did not. I don't think she comes off also as likable. And also, one thing that does work in her favor, though, Vinny, is that the prosecutors don't have exactly what happened beforehand. The only two people that can say what happened beforehand is Sarah Boone and the person who is dead. And now that person's dead, so they can't speak.
Paulette, the expert really has to, a defense expert has to explain to the jury all of her behavior afterwards, right? That's the only way to try to reconcile it, because I think if regular folks who haven't studied this syndrome and don't know anything about it will just look at her and then listen to George in the suitcase, and we're gonna believe that this whole thing is made up unless an expert can somehow explain why she would be like she was in the video, on the body camera video, and in the interrogation room.
I agree. Battered spouse syndrome is absolutely something that is real and can be proved. So yes, I think this is going to really turn into a battle of the experts. The experts will be able to explain to the jury that her behavior is either common or not common with someone who is actually suffering from the syndrome, and why she may not act like you would think you would act in a similar situation. So it is something that is possible. It is something that is proven to juries. But I think those videos are really going to come back to haunt her. And I think whatever the expert says, I think the jury is going to put a lot of weight in those first interviews that she did.
Big thank you, Paulette Lofton, Bernarda Villalona, Ben Chu. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, a wife and mother is stabbed to death, and a man responding to a BDSM ad is shot and killed. What is going on in Virginia? Tonight, we investigate the au-pair love triangle murder case.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, coming up next, only on Court TV.
Tell me in your own words, and in as much detail as you can, what happened that night?
Okay. Where did the other one go? There it is. And this one is Vinny doing a deep dive into the case. pretty much put us caught up to where we are now.
I'm Vinny Politan. The subject of my
Later on the
investigation is
jury.
Sarah Boone and the Suitcase murder trial.
I'm great.
Now, I've covered
How are
several
you?
murders involving suitcases. In all those situations, the suitcase was used to dispose of dismembered body parts. This case is different. Here, the suitcase is alleged to be the actual murder weapon. Here's the story. February 24th, 2020, Sarah Boone and her boyfriend, George Torres, were spending an evening together at Sarah's home. The couple had a bit of a tumultuous past. Both had been arrested on domestic violence charges, but they always seemed to get back together. On this night, the two were drinking. But what happened next is almost inexplicable. George got inside of a suitcase that was then zipped shut. Why and exactly how he got into the suitcase is not 100% clear. But what is clear is that at one point, he wanted to get out. He pleaded with Sarah to open the suitcase, but she refused. Instead, she turned on the video camera on her phone and started to record as George begged for his life. Still, she refused to unzip the suitcase. Then the following morning, she eventually called 911. She said she and George were playing hide and seek, and George ended up in the suitcase. When police responded, they found George dead. Sarah has been charged with second-degree murder, but now she claims she was the victim and is claiming battered spouse syndrome. What happened inside that apartment, and why was George in that suitcase? We've been talking about this story for quite some time. The public reaction is strong, and it always comes back to that image. And I'm going to show you that image right now, so I wanted to warn you. Some people find this difficult to watch. But it's the video that Sarah Boone, the first video that Sarah Boone recorded. And you'll see the suitcase. You'll hear George Torres's voice. He's inside that suitcase. You'll hear Sarah Boone's voice. She's the one holding the camera. Let's watch.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
For everything you've done to me.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
You.
Sarah.
Stupid.
Sarah.
That's my name. Don't wear it up.
Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real or ransom. I want to get video for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real or ransom.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you chewing on me.
Sarah.
You.
Breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the up.
Sarah.
That's just one of the videos, and that's just a couple of minutes. Now, obviously, that's not the entire time that George is inside that suitcase, which brings me to my first question, and I think it'll be an important one at the trial. How long was George in the suitcase? When did he get in? When was it finally unzipped? Joining me Court TV digital content producer who's been covering this story inside and out. Lauren Silver is with us, and forensic pathologist Dr. Priya Banerjee. Thank you both for being here. Lauren, I'll begin with you, and I want to put this up on the screen. We have somewhat of a timeline here of what's going on, but I want you to kind of fill in the blanks. It seems that he's in the suitcase by 11:12 or so. Falls
exactly.
So 11. What are they doing that night at 11:12 that gets him into the suitcase, and how precise is that time?
So we know that their evening starts at sometime around 4 p.m. when the two of them are at home. They're painting pictures, doing puzzles, and it starts with sharing a bottle of wine. At some point, they decided to play hide and seek. Sarah hid upstairs. She says George never came to look for her, so she went downstairs and found him. And at that point, they thought it'd be funny to zip him into the suitcase. Now, where we're getting that 11:12 time is that's the first video recording that you just saw that was on Sarah's phone. So at that point, he's already in the suitcase and saying that he's having trouble breathing.
And then eventually, somehow, some way, she leaves downstairs, goes upstairs, and goes to sleep. We get to the next morning. What's the time frame here? Is she finding him early in the morning, mid-morning, late morning?
She says she went up, went to sleep. She assumed that he would find his own way out of the suitcase. So she says she was woken up at about 11 a.m. by her phone ringing over and over again. She assumed it was her ex-husband, looked around and realized, I don't see George. So she went downstairs looking for him, and it's at that point that she realized he was in the suitcase. He was unresponsive. She couldn't wake him up. And her immediate response was to call her ex-husband.
So I'm doing the math as you're describing all this. Like, it seems at a minimum, it's 11 hours and 48 minutes. All right, Dr. Priya Banerjee, how long could someone survive in a suitcase like that? And is there any way to tell with any precision? Is it a ballpark? And what would it be like for that amount of time for George Torres?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Dr. Banerjee? We're having some trouble, obviously, with Dr. Banerjee hearing me. So, Lauren, as we get back to the suitcase and the time frame, let's get back to that morning. What's her story about what she does when she realizes that he's in the suitcase? I've got to think that she unzips it, right?
So ostensibly she unzips it, realizes she cannot wake him up, and this is at 11 o'clock in the morning. Her first response is to call her ex-husband. So she called her ex-husband. Her ex-husband came over. She insisted he come over. He also saw that George was unresponsive and said they needed to call 911. And then he went outside and waited until the police arrived.
That is
so I don't know how long it took him to get there. Police arrived at 1 o'clock.
And so police aren't there till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And at a minimum, I mean, the latest that he could have gotten in there was 11:12 at night. To me, this is a big piece of the story, a big piece of the case, because you're talking about, okay, you're playing hide and seek, things go awry, whatever. This is overnight. This is through the morning into the afternoon that George Torres is inside that suitcase. The other question a lot of people have had is about, how does he even get in there? But my understanding, George Torres was, he wasn't a huge man. I mean, he was relatively small. He was thin, not super tall. So in terms of his size, if you had to describe him, Lauren, or have they given a weight and a height in some of the documents? Do we know that?
I haven't seen it. I'm not great with those numbers, and I can't say that I've ever tried to put humans into a suitcase, so I don't know how well or how badly you would fit. But what Sarah does tell the police is that he got in willingly. They were laughing about it, and that Sarah zipped him up. But 2 of his fingers were sticking out of the suitcase, and they're having trouble getting them in. And she noted that the handle on the zipper was broken, and they were able to zip it closed with a paper clip. So it was a broken suitcase. The zipper was broken, but she still maintained he would find his own way out.
All right, Dr. Priya Banerjee, back with us. The question I have for you, how long could he survive in that suitcase with it zipped shut? We've got this seemingly 12, potentially 12 plus hours that he's in there, but how long would it take for him to no longer be able to survive?
Well, like Lauren said, it's not an experiment we run in any kind of way, with real people. He does look thin, and obviously he was able to fold up. I don't expect that to be a roomy suitcase. And why I say that is your breathing is dependent on your chest and belly, right, rising and falling, so being able to take deep breaths. And if you're scrunched forward or folded into a suitcase, at that point, your neck, everything is scrunched, right? So it doesn't even have the room to expand. And then someone's going to get real tired, right? Between the stress of being in there, using up energy. And then this doesn't seem like a thin cloth. It looks like a more rugged, even though the zipper's broken. So it's not going to be so breathable that oxygen's going to get in. So I'm treating it as sort of a closed space. And as soon as that air quality, the oxygen runs out, that's it. It's going to be minutes. We do know the physiology of someone being strangled. It's going to be longer than that because it's going to take longer for the air to, oxygen to run out. But it's not 11 hours. It's going to be soon. And it's traumatic to think that he's asking for help and he's laughing.
And is he realizing what's happening? Like, at what point?
Absolutely.
Does he realize that, oh my goodness, this could be the end?
Well, I think it's sort of a slippery slope, right? He's going to become more confused as the oxygen goes down, right? He's going to become weaker. So it's both expending energy and using up the oxygen. So that means he's going to become tired and his brain's going to become foggy. But she's also overtly laughing at him, right? So if he's not, maybe she even removed herself before he dies. That's even scarier. No one's there at the end. So I just think it's awful to think about.
Okay, we've got more to uncover in this case. Coming up next, how did the suitcase flip over?
Sarah. You. Sarah. Stupid. Sarah. That's my name. The word up. Sarah.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
He's in the suitcase still.
There are multiple domestic violence incidents.
You two hitting each other. Sarah. That's my name. The word up.
He told you, Sarah, I can't breathe.
George Torres locked inside of a suitcase, begging for help.
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting October 7th on Court TV.
We have a puzzle that we started in there. Okay. We've been doing art, trying to take the stuff off the wall to make new art put up there, like having a good time with one another. But we're drinking. We had a bottle of wine last night. Okay. So then it's like, we decided to play hide and seek, right? Okay. So he gets in the suitcase. The problem is I fell asleep. I fell asleep. When did you do CPR? This morning, when I found it. Before you called? Yes! 1 o'clock right now. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30-ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. And that's when I found him, and I took him out, and I tried doing CPR, and then I called him, and then I called you guys. And I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
What kind of medical conditions does he have?
None that I know of.
Nothing that you know of.
None
You didn't
that I
take
know
any
of.
medicine?
No. All we had was a bottle of wine.
12 hours locked inside of a suitcase, it's not going to be an aneurysm that's going to take your life. So I wanted to, I said there's more than one video. There's two videos. The second one's a little bit shorter, but I want to show you the second video as we watch it and listen to it. Take a close look, because it's interesting to see the positioning of the suitcase.
Sarah.
So the positioning of the suitcase, where it is on the floor, and you heard George was still alive there saying Sarah, again, pleading for his life. Let's take a look at the first video next to the second video. And the one thing that's clear to me is that it's not in the same position. It's moved. It's on its back on one, and then it's on the other side in the other picture. So it's not stationary. It's not like he's in the suitcase, he's locked in, and the suitcase stays there. Something else is at play here. Brings me to my next question, which is, how did the suitcase flip over? What's going on there? Is it him? Is she torturing him? What exactly is going on here that changes the position of that suitcase? With me, Court TV digital content producer Lauren Silver and forensic pathologist Dr. Priya Banerjee. Lauren, is there any evidence or statements relative to the positioning of the suitcase, because it's obviously on different sides, flipped over from video 1 to video 2?
Well, I combed through the documents, and she is very clear that she had been upstairs, the suitcase was downstairs, and they got in the suitcase downstairs. So she says the suitcase was always downstairs. There were some items in there that they wanted to unpack. They took them out. He got in, and then she zipped it up. The only mention of the movement, which is clear in the videos, is by the detectives themselves in the police report, noting on the video that in the first, the suitcase is facing downward, and you can see George is pressing from inside to get out, whereas the second one, it's facing upwards and is moved over to the left side of the living room. It doesn't offer any speculation as to how that happened, and as far as I know, Sarah Boone's never given any explanation.
Let me ask you, Dr. Priya Banerjee, I guess two scenarios. I want to talk about one scenario, though. If she is moving this suitcase around and rolling it around, would you expect to find any particular types of injuries during the autopsy that could perhaps be consistent with someone being locked in a suitcase and sort of tossed around in that suitcase?
Yeah, I don't know the exact model of the suitcase, but obviously that would be available to my colleagues. Oftentimes, I think you would look for marks, like whether it be contusion, so bruising from any sort of ribbing, handle, the wheels jutting in, any kind of hardware or outpoutings. Usually, I mean, it's pretty smooth, but you don't know how he's scrunched up in there. The one thing I want to point out, though, is if, and this is pure speculation, if it was twisted while he was alive, you can see that the zipper is now on the bottom, right? If we're moving from position 1 being on the right-hand side of my screen to the side, where it's flipped over on the rug now, the sort of lid, if you will, the zippered portion is now on the floor. That's impossible to extricate yourself from. Even if he's trying to undo the zipper, which is faulty in and of itself, you can see, how is he going to lift the lid off? Even if he's trying to kick, I don't think it's so small. A grown man, even if he's petite, is going to have a very difficult time getting out.
Now, there's a video posted on Deep Dive True Crime on YouTube, which appears to feature audio from a police interview with Sarah Boone's neighbor. Now, in it, he describes hearing a loud crash. Let's take a listen.
Do you recall hearing anything coming from apartment 3 while you were, after you had gotten home?
Around 10:30 or 11 o'clock, there was a very loud crashing sound where I believe, I'm not sure, I haven't been in their apartment on my roommate, but I believe is the location of the staircase.
Okay, so
a little bit above.
A very loud, you said crashing sound?
Yeah, like it sounded like something had been like falling down the stairs. Because it started up high and then it ended low.
Okay, Dr. Priya Banerjee, if this suitcase with a man inside shut is rolled down a staircase, what type of injuries would you expect? And would you expect someone to still be conscious and be able to talk the way George was when he was begging for his life?
Sure. Just to clarify, are you asking whether he's already inside the suitcase as he goes down the stairs?
Oh, yeah, inside the suitcase being rolled down the stairs.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother can of worms. You can imagine as that tumbling motion is in there, he could bang around, and at least, I know it's a soft-sided suitcase, but there has to be some reinforcement frame in there. Those can add, bumps and bruises to him. So you should see some unexplained injuries in that source. I don't think there was any significant head trauma. From what I read about his cause of death, it was all related to the suffocation.
Dr. Priya Banerjee, Lauren Silver, thank you both so much. A lot more to uncover. I'm Vinny Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinny Politan. We continue our investigation of Sarah Boone and the Suitcase murder trial. The biggest issue for Sarah Boone is that she recorded herself taunting the victim, George Torres, while he begged for his life from inside a suitcase. That inexplicable behavior is what she'll need to explain at trial. Here's the story. Sarah Boone and George Torres were involved in an on-again, off-again tumultuous relationship filled with accusations of cheating and abuse. But on February 23rd, 2020, Sarah and George were together at her home, spending some time together drinking. But at some point that night, for some reason, George ended up locked inside of a suitcase while Sarah taunted him as she recorded a video. George tragically died, and now Sarah is facing murder charges, and there are still many lingering questions in this case about their relationship and exactly why Sarah didn't open that suitcase and just let George out. Sometimes going into a trial, we know some of the facts and we know a little bit about the defendant and what they may or may not have said. This case is different. Sarah Boone, from the 911 call to the interview/interrogation to the body cam video from the responding officers. We get to hear her tell her story. So I want to play for you right now body cam video from the next day when you have the responding officer speaking with Sarah Boone and trying to get an understanding of what's going on here. Let's take a look.
We have a puzzle that we started in there.
Okay.
We've been doing art, trying to take the stuff off the wall to make new art put up there, like having a good time with one another. But we're drinking. We had a bottle of wine last night.
Okay. Fine.
So then it's like, we decided to play hide and seek, right?
Okay.
So he gets in the suitcase, okay?
Who is this guy?
That's my ex-husband, my former husband.
How did he lives here with you guys?
No. I called him over here.
Okay, okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
So then he came over here.
Here, let's talk in private, okay?
I called you guys. I tried giving him CPR. The problem is I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
When did you do CPR?
This morning, when I found it.
Before you called?
Yes!
1 o'clock right now.
I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. And that's when I found him, and I took him out, and I tried doing CPR, and then I called him, and then I called you guys.
Did he get here before the fire department got here?
Who?
Your husband or your ex-husband?
Yes.
Okay. Where does he live at?
Right down the street.
Okay. So you were playing and who zipped him up?
I did, but then I fell asleep.
Okay. You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened.
I fell asleep, so I don't know if he suffocated or like had an aneurysm or a heart attack or what.
What kind of medical conditions does he have?
None that I know of.
Nothing that you know of.
None
You didn't
that I
take
know
any
of.
medicine?
No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine.
Okay.
Doing puzzle artwork. Then we decided to play hide and seek. That's all that happened.
So that's her story to the responding officer. But as I told you, it's not the only person she's talking to, and that her story or her statements are recorded. So that brings me to my next question, and it's an important one for the trial. Is Sarah Boone's story consistent? How many times have we seen cases where stories change and you hear those arguments in the courtroom that the story has evolved, the story has changed? Well, is her story consistent here with what happened? Joining me, Sarah Boone's new attorney, James Owens, is with us. And James, I understand you're preparing for trial, so I know there may be some things you can't talk about. I just want to let the viewers know that that's part of the deal when we bring on the lawyer. And thank you so much for being here. Also with us, Sarah's former defense attorney, Frank Bankowitz. So thank you both for being here. I do appreciate it. So I wanted to point out a couple of scenarios here and kind of get your take on it. And I'll begin with Sarah Boone talking about when she woke up. In one statement, Sarah woke up to her cell phone ringing multiple times around 1100 hours. This is in a police statement. She went downstairs, did not see George anywhere in the apartment. She then realizes that he was possibly still inside the suitcase. Sarah unzipped the suitcase and found George unresponsive and not breathing. However, on the body cam video, I want to play that so we can see if it's consistent with that version.
When did you do CPR?
This morning, when I found it.
Before you called?
Yes!
1 o'clock right now.
I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever.
Okay, so James, is there a problem here in when she's getting up, or is this story consistent, at least this part, of when she gets up the following morning?
Thanks for having me, Vinny. I don't think she had a watch on every time they're asking her questions about the times. Guessing, trying to give them an answer. So I don't think she should be looked down upon or considered that she's being evasive. I just think she didn't know the time frame.
Frank, from your perspective, is there a problem with her story, or is it something that is consistent enough for a jury to say, hey, every time she's telling the story, she's telling the same story about what happened that morning?
Well, I don't know that you can point to inconsistencies. I think it's, she's nervous, she's upset, she's basically kind of in a panic mode from what I see in the video and what I've seen in the past. And I don't know that you can point to those as being inconsistencies.
I want to show go to another issue here, which is the state of mind that night and what was happening. First, Sarah mentioned that she and George had been consuming alcohol during the night, and she went upstairs and passed out in her bed. But here she is in her interview talking about the same issue of drinking that night.
You told me but you told me on recording, like, that you were not drunk, he was not drunk, you guys were having a good time.
I can't get drunk. Number one, I do not want to get drunk. I don't like being non-complimentous, having my wits about myself. I don't like feeling out of control. So
I'm just saying, you're making it sound like he's a raging alcoholic today, and yesterday I was kind of asking you those questions, and you're like, a little defensive, like, no, we're not alcoholics.
I'm not.
We are not, you know. But you guys were both sober on Sunday, to your knowledge, because when I said you went and passed out, you were like, no, I didn't pass out, I just fell asleep. So now it's kind of like, what is it? Were you guys drinking and it got out of hand and it got physical?
No.
Or is it...
Sunday was one of the better days that we have had in quite some time.
So where were you guys at on drunkenness, not drunkenness on Sunday? You told us you weren't drunk.
No, I was not drunk.
Right.
I was not drunk.
Okay, James, from the beginning of my coverage of the story, that's always been a big issue because you listen to the voice, it sounds like she's under the influence. Is this a problem? The fact that she seems to be denying that they were drinking, denying that she was drunk, or was she actually sober that night?
No, I think they were drinking, and I think that earlier in the day, she to the Publix, which is a short distance away from their apartment. And then later on the day, he went a second time to Publix and got another bottle. So both of those and found in the garbage can, and the receipts were found somewhere in the apartment. So they were the only in the apartment that night. So they both consumed. So they did drink quite a bit.
Frank Mankiewicz, let me ask you about that issue of the drinking. Is that a huge problem for Sarah Boone that they were drinking, or how does this play in front of a jury, and what does it mean?
Well, I would agree with Mr. Owens. They were drinking a lot. They consumed 2 full bottles of wine. They finished one and went out and bought a second and finished it. Whether in her mind at that point in time she can establish whether she was drunk or not, I think that's going to be a question for the jury. And they're going to have to look at all these tapes and look at the actual facts as to what she did, where she had gone, and the fact that she, quote, fell asleep, to me is consistent with being passed out. But that's to me. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with that. Mr. Owens does.
Mr. Owens, number 9, will be representing Sarah Boone at the trial. This is a big one now. I think this is probably the biggest one if there is an inconsistency. From the beginning, it seems that Sarah was talking about playing a game of hide and seek, that George willingly got into the suitcase. Sarah zipped the suitcase up, and they were both laughing as she zipped him into the suitcase. But now I want to play the last time, James, you were in court talking about what Sarah's defense is going to be in this case.
Judge, the state doesn't know what happened the 2 minutes prior, or the minutes leading up to, the time leading up to the 2-minute video. The state doesn't know what happened after the 2-minute video. Only Sarah Boone can testify to that. That's for her to testify to.
Florida, the appellant has not cited, nor is our research located, any Florida case holding that evidence of battered spouse syndrome is admissible where the defendant claims accident rather than self-defense.
Who claims accident?
Are you claiming self-defense?
Yes.
Well, that's the first time that I've heard that.
Judge, I just mentioned it a while ago.
The word self-defense never came out of your mouth.
Judge,
words that you believe that the state's position is, what you believe that they're going to try to establish, that we don't know what happened before and after that video. The words self-defense have never been uttered this afternoon.
Judge, for the record, we're claiming self-defense. We're utilizing the battered spouse syndrome in conjunction with that defense.
Okay. Right.
Not accident, as they want to allege.
Okay.
Okay, James, let me ask you, if they're laughing, if she says they're laughing when she zipped him in, how does that equal self-defense? Is that inconsistent?
Well, like I said in court, the video is only 2 minutes long that Sarah recorded of George in the suitcase. So no one but Sarah knows what happened prior to reported, and no one but Sarah knows what happened. Turned off the video. So her to testify to and explain what happened.
All right, James Owens and Frank Bankowitz staying with us. Still to come. Was there a history of domestic violence?
Sometimes I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid of his family.
One of the most successful true crime TV shows ever.
This is crazy.
Now has a new home on America's original true crime obsession, 48 Hours, on Court TV. Coming up next on Court TV.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting October 7th on Court TV.
Sometimes I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid of his family. My son can't come over here because he's here.
That's body camera video from a different incident involving Sarah Boone and George Torres. And you hear some fear in the voice of Sarah Boone there. I want to go back now to the suitcase video because I want you to listen closely to what Sarah Boone is saying.
For everything you've done to me. Sarah. For everything you've done to me. Sarah. You. Sarah. You. Sarah. Stupid. Sarah. That's my name. Don't wear it up. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe. Seriously. Yeah, that's when you do and you choke me.
This is for everything. That's what you get when you choke me. It brings me to my next question, which I think will be a major issue in this case. Was there a history of domestic violence? Sarah Boone, George Torres. Still with me, Sarah Boone's new attorney, James Owens, and her former attorney, Frank Bankowitz. Before we talk about this, I want to show one more video from another domestic violence incident. This one's from September 4th of 2019.
George was hiding in the bathtub upstairs. Okay?
Yes.
So, he gave me his side of things. I need you to give me your side of things in person right here. I know we kind of talked on the phone, but I need you to tell me what happened tonight. So what happened?
Okay, well, pardon my language, because it's not me. I was called a and
okay.
And I'm not a mother to my son.
Okay.
All the while, nonetheless, I was sleeping before that.
Okay. So you're woken up to him calling you names. Is that what you're saying?
I thought that I'm like, feed the beast, go outside and smoke a cigarette with him.
Okay.
Try to calm things. Well, the whole time I was there saying nothing. Nothing. I was called names.
Okay. So you guys were smoking a cigarette and he was calling you names, being verbally aggressive with you. Verbally abusive.
Before that, where I'm like, I don't want to get hit anymore. So I'm just going to go downstairs and smoke a cigarette with him to try to calm him down.
Okay. So you're saying, okay, I'm trying to get a timeline of things. So start from the beginning and give me the timeline.
Was that I was asleep?
I don't, not literal time, but in a reference of incidents, how they occurred tonight.
I was asleep, and again, he comes in and wakes me up.
He wakes you up, okay.
He's out of sorts.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure things out.
Okay.
Where it's like, don't make it worse. Just go downstairs with him. Because he gets mad at me because I go to sleep.
Okay.
I go downstairs, smoke a cigarette. The whole time I'm being belittled.
Okay.
Pardon me for saying talk about.
Okay. Frank Bankowitz, is there a history of domestic violence in this relationship? And if so, how serious?
Absolutely. There's a long history of domestic violence, and I'm sure all of that's going to come out or has already come out with regard to the battered spouse defense. That's one of the principal elements is to establish a history of abuse. And there was a long history of abuse in this case, history of hospitalizations, history of broken bones, history of arrests. It's a classic situation of battered spouse syndrome, in my opinion.
I want to put this up on the screen. Sarah stated, this is June 15th, 2019. She was beaten up, face, head, legs, and arms. She stated that she begged George to stop, and George stated, "You're going to die." Sarah stated that George punched her in the head, flung her off the bed. Sarah stated this incident occurred due to George being upset about Sarah speaking to a male. James Owens, this history that we are uncovering here, is the jury going to see and hear about this history?
Yes. The filed a notice of intent to rely on, and in the notice and in the amended notice, we alleged that there were prior incidences of abuse, and Dr. Julie Harper to testify on that issue. So yes, there is corroboration in the terms of a prior history of George and emotionally and sexually abusing Sarah Boone.
And I'm looking here at George's arrest history. It looks like June 15th, arrested for battery. June 18th, arrested for violation of pretrial release, making contact with Sarah when he wasn't supposed to. August 28th, 2019, a battery arrest. September 4th, arrested for battery. Is all of this connected to Sarah, or are there other cases that are out there? And do you expect the jury to hear the history of George Torres, James?
Yes, I believe those instances relate to the domestic George and Sarah, and I believe there is other incidences. As far as how much comes in, there are rules that come into play in the evidence.
Okay.
I have to make some decisions about that.
James, I hate to cut you off, but we are out of time. James Owens, we appreciate it. Frank Bankowitz, thank you both so much. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding this case has been, when will this trial happen? Sarah Boone on lawyer number 9, but believe it or not, it looks like this time it will happen. We'll see the trial right here on Court TV. The question is, what will the jury say at the end of all of this? I'm Vinny Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.
On February 24th, 2020, Sarah Boone and her boyfriend, George Torres, were spending an evening together at Sarah's home. The two were drinking, and what happened that night is almost inexplicable. George got inside of a suitcase that was then zipped shut. At one point, he wanted to get out and pleaded with Sarah to open the suitcase, but she refused. Instead, she turned on the video camera on her phone and started to record as George begged for his life. Still, she refused to unzip the suitcase. George died, and now Sarah has been charged with second-degree murder. Once she was charged, Boone was locked up in jail waiting for her trial date. But each time the trial was scheduled, it got rescheduled again and again and again. The main problem, Sarah's difficulty with her representation. 8 different attorneys have tried to represent her, and all 8 have dropped out of the case. The judge said 8 is enough, and he was going forward with the trial, so she would have to represent herself. And then Sarah Boone filed this want ad looking for a lawyer. Would anyone answer that ad? Would anyone step forward to save Sarah from representing herself? Tonight, we speak live with the man who answered the call, the man who will, believe it or not, represent Sarah Boone.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. I'm back from vacation. The calendar has now moved. We're past Labor Day. We're in September, a new month. And what that means really in the judicial calendar is a lot of cases get set up for the fall. And every year, year after year at Court TV, there are always huge cases that are ready to go, whether it's September or October. Get the big ones on the plate, get them going before the holidays hit. They'll be here before you know it. So the fall is always prime time for big cases on Court TV, including one that we've been following, and I've been following for years now. It's getting close to half a decade on this one. Talking about the Suitcase case. The one where the suitcase is not for the remains of the victim after the victim is murdered and then dismembered. No, the suitcase in this case is the murder weapon. Never seen it before. It's a first, but that's the case that prosecutors say they have against a woman named Sarah Boone. And Sarah Boone first called 911 and said she found her boyfriend dead in the suitcase and they were playing hide and seek. Like, that was the original story that we heard. When this story broke and we first started covering back in 2020, they're playing hide and seek. And I was trying to figure out how does that work? Did he zip himself in the suitcase? If so, how did he do it if they're playing hide and seek? But the more you peel back the layers of what happened in her story, it wasn't traditional hide and seek. She has seemingly conceded or admitted that she zipped up the suitcase, at least in some of the information that's been made public so far in this case. So that was back in 2020. And then we kept waiting for these trial dates to happen again and again and again, and they never seemed to happen. Never happened, because there's always a problem with Sarah Boone and her lawyers. 8 different lawyers have left representing Sarah Boone. 8. Something else I don't think we've ever seen before here on Court TV through all these years. That someone can't find a lawyer that she gets along with, that will be willing to step in and represent her in this case. So, at one point, the judge just had it and said, you got to represent yourself. And we've seen on Court TV how that turns out for some defendants like Darrell Brooks. It never ends well for someone representing themselves, especially in a case like this. Is a second-degree murder case. There's a lot at stake here. And for someone who's never tried a case, someone who's not a lawyer, to try to go up against the state and try to prove or try to challenge the prosecution's proof, you're not going to be able to do that. It's going to be a disaster. You know how that one's going to end. So I think Sarah Boone was smart enough, and I think she realized that. And she wanted a lawyer. And she actually, in one of her letters to the judge and the filings that are made that become public records, there was this piece of paper that was like a want ad for her looking for someone to represent her. Take a listen as my producer reads it.
Inmate seeks attorney. Looking for a prosperous challenge? Ready for your close-up on national television? Are you zealous with the side of keen? Show the world who you are with your original creativity, extraordinary expertise, confident ingenuity. Qualifications must include being trustworthy, honest, passion-driven, open-minded, exceptional problem-solving skills, client inclusion at all times, team orientation, collaboration, extreme efficiency in listening, communicating, understanding, dedication to success, possessing a winning mindset, capability of excellence in representation, committed, maintaining faith in the client and case with the ability to think differently, overcome all circumstances. Epic opportunity awaits. Sarah Boone, number 20005623. Orange County Corrections Department. Invest in the oppressed. Believe.
So who would believe in Sarah Boone? Well, someone did step forward to take this case. Yes, an attorney in Florida. Joining me by phone, Sarah Boone's ninth attorney, James Owens. James, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Vinny, for having me.
Okay, the first question I know everyone's asking you, why? Why did you take this case, James?
Well, I watch a lot of YouTube, and I watch a lot of court TV, and I've been following this case just like all the other true crime people do, and kept watching it being delayed and the lawyers being switched, and then saw that the judge got fed up and ruled that she had forfeited her right to a court-appointed counsel. And so that's a rare event. As lawyers, we know that, everybody has a right to a lawyer, a court-appointed lawyer, if you can't afford one. So on a serious charge, a felony, in this case it was a murder, for the judge to revoke that right was a serious decision on his part. I don't disagree. I respect the court's decision, but that left her facing a murder charge without a lawyer, which is unheard of, I think. And so, I watched for a while, and then I saw the ad on your show, and I think that you had said something implying, hey, who's gonna take the case? What lawyer in Florida is gonna pick up the torch, so to speak? And I think you had somebody on, maybe it was a lawyer from the Northeast, and I think I remember that lawyer saying, man, if I was a license in Florida, I'd take the case, under that scenario, because she really needs a lawyer. Everybody needs a lawyer. And so the ad came out, and I sat there and waited for 3 or 4 weeks. I can't remember now how long I waited, but I was thinking that a lawyer out of Orlando would pick up the case. Somebody would think, hey, this is not right. There's no way she's going to get a fair trial representing herself. It's unfair. But there's a gap in the system. The judge made the decision based on her conduct that she had forfeited a right to a lawyer. I believe that's where the private sector has got to step in. Somebody in the private sector in that situation, and it's rare, should step in. So, I waited. Nobody responded in the local area. So I just happened to have a case down in Hillsborough County that I was going to, down in Tampa. And so I knew I was scheduled for court down there. So about a week before that, I sent her a letter, and she had a third party contact me to, I guess, check me out to see if I was legitimate. And
well, I think everyone's been checking you out in the last couple days, and everybody knows you are absolutely legitimate, James. I mean, you have quite a history.
I've been doing it a long time. So anyway, she reached out to me, and then a couple of days later, Sarah called me from the jail in Orange County in Orlando, and we talked for a little bit, and I explained to her that I was coming down that Wednesday, but I'd come down early and spend Tuesday talking to her, and she agreed. So I drove down Monday after work. Tuesday morning,
can you describe that meeting without, I know attorney-client communications is off limits, but how would you describe that meeting to someone? Like, was it different than meeting other clients for the first time?
The first meeting?
Yeah.
No, it was a 4-hour meeting. I usually don't meet with clients in the jail for that long, so I gave her a chance to talk and just listened. For a long time, she had a lot to say. Obviously, she's been in jail for 4 years. And, we had a good meeting. Just, again, I think she has trust issues because she felt like she did have some good lawyers that were on her case and just withdrew because they would get in some arguments about issues, I guess. And so she said they wouldn't even tell her anything at the jail, but the next thing you know, she would, be sent to court and the lawyer had filed a motion to withdraw. So she didn't, trust the lawyers because she didn't know who to trust. She'd been with so many. So a lot of it was just trying to build trust with her. After she talked a little bit, I told her a little bit about myself. So really feeling each other out and trying to build some kind of rapport was the first meeting, which was about 4 hours. But I think early on in the case, I was able to persuade her that I knew what I was talking about because I was prepared. When I got there, I was prepared, and I played part of that 4 hours. I played the prosecutor, and I pulled out the jury instructions, and I made an argument as a prosecutor would make to a jury, and I had her sit there and listen to it. And I think that was effective. I don't think she had anybody ever do that to her and explain it to her that way of how it would play out in court. And that got her attention. And, initially I was going down there. Now, let me tell you, my initial thought going down there was this. She didn't have a lawyer. And once that happens, once they're pro se, then you know as well as I do that all these cases are up for negotiation. Plea agreements are pretty much on the table at any time, and judges recommend, the courts recommend, you try to work cases out. The vast majority of cases get worked out with pleas. So, I talked to her about that, and that was my intent. I'd called the prosecutor and told him I was coming down there to speak with her ahead of time, and he wanted me to file some kind of a notice of appearance, and I didn't want to do that. I wasn't ready to take on the case. So I got her to sign a document essentially saying, hey, I don't want to negotiate directly with you, state attorney. I would like for James Owens to work, just to talk to you. And so she signed that, and I did, for a couple of days, talk to the prosecutor. I was trying to resolve it.
Right.
And I felt like the judge is fixing to have a trial, a 3-week trial with a pro se defendant. Prosecutor is fixing to have a trial with a 3-week trial with a pro se defendant. It was not going to be fair. And I felt like they might be in a posture to try to negotiate something that would be doable. So that was my first intent, was not to handle the case, not to try the case. If we got something worked out, then I would file a notice of appearance, and we'd set it for a court date to resolve it.
That didn't happen,
though. No, it didn't. And, I left that 4-hour meeting. I went to Tampa the next day, had court, and then turns out the investigator that had been assigned to the pro se litigant, Sarah Boone, he was meeting with her that evening at 7, so I asked if I could just join. So I came back over and spent about an hour and a half with her and Billy Lane, the investigator. And we talked some more, and I was convinced that there was going to be no plea bargaining. So I told her I was not representing her and I was leaving, and I emailed the prosecutor or called the prosecutor and said, look, we've reached an impasse. There's no agreement, and I'm not going to be representing her. And I went home. And I want to say a couple of days later, Sarah called me, and we talked some more. And I told her Vinny,
So, but at this point, she's now reaching out to you because she wants James Owens to represent her.
Well, we did connect. And I think she was overwhelmed being her own lawyer. She was stressed out.
Yeah.
She had all this discovery that she was trying to go over. She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know the rules of procedure, rules of evidence. And she had told the judge, I think they'd had a couple of hearings on some issues, and she said, Judge, this is not fair. I don't know what I'm doing. And the judge kept saying, well, I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is your position. So I think she was just thankful that I came down to see her. We had, some good meetings. So I think she really needed some help. So I think that was partly to do with it, but there were still some issues because I think she was let down because I said I wasn't going to represent her.
Right.
So we got off the phone. I still said I wasn't committed to it, but I was thinking about it. But as you know, second-degree murder trial, and the judge had set a firm date for October the 7th, which is really difficult to do. I mean, you pretty much have to shut down your practice for 30 days or 6 weeks.
Absolutely.
And just to try to catch up and just which is essentially what I'm having to do. Now,
well, you've seen the body cam, all the interrogation videos, the 911 call, and then, of course, the cell video. It starts there, right? But in terms of getting prepared in 30 days for this trial, that's 4 years old and a lot of things have happened. Can you do it? And will you be ready?
Well, I'm gonna do my best with the time I've got left. That's all I can do. I'm gonna get some help. I've got to get some staff helping me. I've got a couple of lawyers that are buddies of mine that have offered their help. So
I should send that lawyer from the Northeast down to help you. Joseph Krowski is the guy.
Yeah.
We'll let him know that he's the reason that you jumped in the case. He may fly down there to help you. He's up in Boston. It's cold. He may come down and help you.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I've got two lawyers that, like I say, I think are going to help me. Are pretty much committed to it. They're friends of mine, and I trust them, and they want to help me. And they realize I thought the case was going to be continued. I respect the judge's decision, but I really thought.
Let me ask you this. Have you spoken to any of the other 8?
Yes. I spoke to Ms. Cashman, who was the last lawyer that had it. I've tried to speak to Mr. Padilla out of Miami. He's the one that had the case initially. He had it for about 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. He did most of the discovery, took most of the depositions. I think they were pretty much ready for trial or getting close, and he withdrew. But I've tried to call him a couple of times. I know he's been in a double homicide case he just got out of, but I never was able to speak with him.
And you're doing this pro bono? I mean, I don't think she has much.
No.
What are you getting?
Well, Sarah's got to pay me back one day.
Okay. Okay.
That was the agreement I had. I wanted her to understand that she needs to be self-reliant and she needs to be responsible for fees. I've got a bunch of clients that are paying me, and some of them only pay $50 a month. And but it's important to me. It's important to them, that we have an arrangement to make payments, and that's what I told her.
Do you think?
I feel.
Do you think she needs to tell her story in the courtroom?
Well, Sarah's a unique individual. I don't know. In a criminal case, is the time to tell her whole story. I think if it's necessary, she'll take the stand. We're just going to see how the case plays out. We'll make that decision when the time comes. Of course, she's got a lot to say. She's filed a lot of pleadings, a lot of letters. Some ill-advised.
We've seen them. Trust me, we've seen them. So, James, this is what I want to do. I want to stay in contact with you, and then we are legitimately going to reach out to Joseph Krowski to see if he is willing to get down there if he needs an extra hand. But also wanted to let you know that I wanted to let you go now because I know you've got some discovery. You got a couple more hours tonight. You can jump in there and as you get ready for this. But I hope that we can reach out to you as we get closer and closer to the trial and grab a couple minutes of your time.
Thanks, Vinny.
All right.
Appreciate you.
James Owens, folks, this is how the system works. It doesn't work if lawyers just look away and don't jump in like this. Everyone, whether you believe they're guilty or not guilty, it doesn't matter. Without defense attorneys stepping in like James Owens is in this case, the whole system crumbles. It absolutely crumbles. So pretty amazing that he jumped into this as lawyer number 9. Okay, we got a lot to get to still. When we come back, we'll bring in our think tank. What do they think about this? Plus, coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the subject of the true crime podcast Serial. Adnan Syed was a free man after his conviction was vacated in 2022. But now 2 years later, that conviction has been reinstated. What does this mean? We'll investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan.
In every story, in every trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
To dive into the latest
Oh my God.
and breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside
I've never seen that in a discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
and outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
You got to understand, Sarah's been through 8 lawyers, so there's some trust issues. And on both sides, you know, I'm concerned, is she going to try to fire me, or we're going to have problems the same way, as you can imagine. But, you know, I like her. She likes me. We communicate well. I think we're both on the same page. And, you know, I spoke to my family, my wife, my daughter Sarah about it. Sarah's thinking about law school, so I got their blessing. I have, you know, some colleagues that I practice law with, a law group there in Milton. And obviously it's going to take some staff to pull something like this off.
How about that, folks? Somebody stepped forward to represent Sarah Boone. James Owens is his name, really experienced attorney, but he's nowhere near Orlando. He's closer to Pensacola. If you don't know anything about Florida, you don't just drive. That's a flight. So he's stepping up. He's stepping in. Let's get some reactions, some perspective from our think tank tonight. Joining us, trial attorney, fellow of the American College of Trial Lawyers, Ann Bremner is with us. Also joining us, trial attorney, former police lieutenant Rick King, and the state attorney for Palm Beach County, Harvard Smarty, Dave Arenberg. Great to see everyone. Can I start here, because I got 2 Florida guys here, but Dave, you can't do it. But Rick, do you want to be part of the team? You want to jump up to Orlando and help James out? He needs a little bit of help.
You know, the one thing that he said, he said a lot of things that were right, but there's one thing he said was, you know, in order to try to do something like this, you got to put the rest of your practice down. There's no way that you can come together from September to October the 7th without putting the rest of your practice down. And it's, for me right now, that would be impossible. But big ups. I really got I give Mr. Owens a lot of credit, and I'm a lot of respect for him for taking up this cause, because he's right.
He stepped up. He's stepping up.
Yeah.
Ann Bremner, first of all, are you surprised that someone did it? Number one, and are you surprised that they responded to me placing the ad here on closing arguments?
As to the second one, not at all. Everyone watches you, and that's what Mr. Owens just said, right? But I'm not surprised. I think he's a great guy for doing it. Like you said, our profession and the courts need this. But wouldn't the courts reimburse him through the public defenders payments that would be given to someone that appeared on her behalf through their office? I mean, I was just wondering about that, because it's a pretty noble thing to undertake, but an expensive one basically at the expense of his practice.
Yeah, but I think the judge appointed like 8 different lawyers at one point.
Right.
Dave Arenberg, I'm a former prosecutor, you're a prosecutor, but I think we all appreciate, as prosecutors, defense attorneys stepping in and stepping up. And I think it's going to help this prosecutor, even though it'll be a more difficult case. It's just not going to be as messy. It'll be a little bit more organized, less kind of, you know, being gentle that you need to be in the courtroom. You can just be yourself.
Maybe no prosecutor wants a circus, especially with a defendant like Miss Boone, who is high drama, who is very difficult to get along with. And I give a lot of respect for Mr. Owens for stepping up. But remember, this is a self-inflicted wound. This is something she did because of her conduct. She apparently wouldn't listen to her lawyers. She made it so difficult for them. They bailed on her. So when Mr. Owens says that, well, she has trust issues, look at yourself in the mirror, ma'am. You're the reason why these people bailed on you. And maybe once she can realize that it's her fault. Right now, it seems like she likes to blame everyone else for all of her problems, hopefully Mr. Owens will stay around. But, you know, we've seen this movie before where someone steps in and says, I can reform this person. I can change this person. I'll be the friend. And then people reveal their true colors soon enough, and then they end up like everyone else.
Yeah, but the difference here, I think Sarah Boone realized this trial is happening. It's not happening. Let me ask you though, Rick, about the 4-hour initial meeting in the jail. Like, that's almost serving time if you're 4 hours behind bars with your client.
You know, honestly, my law partner, when she goes to the jail, she's in there for quite some time. So 4 hours, not really that bad, but it's a start for.
If you stay for 6, do you get to eat with the rest of the inmates? Like, how does that work? 4 hours is a long time. So let me play a little bit from today's hearing, because James was looking for more time, and here's how it all went down.
It is critical to my theory, our theory of defense, battered spouse syndrome. And as you know, that takes time to develop, especially when the motion basically speaks for itself, but we're in a time crunch. Essentially, the trial is set for October the 7th. I have to provide a notice of intent to rely on battered spouse syndrome 30 days prior, which is September 7th, which falls on a Saturday, so I believe that gives me till the next business day, Monday, September 9th. But still, 6 days for Dr. Julie Harper to come back out and visit with Ms. Boone, coupled with this other potential forensic psychologist, Dr. Michael Brandon. He's not going to have time to do that. They've got to establish a rapport with her before they can run the testing, spend the time with her. It involves some extensive history. Obviously, that couple was together for 3 or 4 years. I still have to peel back all the layers. That's just going to take a little bit of time, Judge. I'm thinking 2 or 3 months, and we'll be ready to go.
The state's position would be that we would oppose a continuance at this time. However, the state's not opposed to setting another status hearing sometime next week, possibly, where we could address this and to see if there has been any movement, anything that would either change the state's position or potentially the court's position as well.
You've met with Ms. Boone on 4 different occasions, that you just met with her yesterday for 2.5 hours. You were aware of what the order identified, which was in paragraph 6 of the ordered and adjudged portion, that trial is specially set for October 7th, 2024, and that it would be not continued for any reason, absent extraordinarily good cause, and such extraordinarily good cause would not include the retention of counsel.
Dave Ehrenberg, are you surprised? Could this, if there's a conviction, could this be a problem on appeal?
Yes, this is my surprise. Look, I understand why the judge did this. The judge said no means no. He said you're not going to get another extension, and we're not giving you another court-appointed lawyer. That's it. So her only avenue is to get her own lawyer, but it meant no extension. And now you have the new lawyer saying, I need an extension. So I get why the judge denied it, but you're risking fate here. You're tempting fate because you're saying that we're going to be so secure that our future conviction will be upheld on appeal that I'm not going to grant you one more extension. I would have just said, go ahead with it. Even the prosecutor took a more, nuanced view of this. I mean, they don't want a conviction being overturned on appeal. That would be the worst situation for everyone involved, except for Sarah Boone.
Now, we heard James Owens talk about experts. All those experts are connected to his defense, which we believe they're going to attempt, if the experts agree, to a battered spouse defense. When we come back, we're going to talk about that and talk about the victim's history and the relationship here and the domestic violence that exists between the two.
Sometimes I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I'm afraid of it.
Breeze Drive, Spring Village subdivision.
I'm afraid of his family.
Female, black dress, tan shirt, -0.
My son can't come over here because he's here. I didn't know you needed that specific.
You didn't even include it at all.
Me and ear. I saw light.
Okay, so he kicks the door open, jumps on top of you, punches you in the ear. Am I right? Or am I wrong?
No, you're right.
Okay, that's about 5 months before the Suitcase incident where Sarah Boone is describing alleged abuse by her boyfriend, George Torres. Now, there is a history here, and George Torres has an arrest history. Take a look. June 15th, 2019, George is arrested for battery. June 18th, 2019, George is arrested for violation of a pretrial release condition. He was making contact with Sarah when he was not supposed to. Police were investigating something else and came across that. August 28th, 2019, George is arrested for battery as well. Then September 4th, 2019, George arrested for battery again. Now, September 4th, 2019, again, 5 months before the Suitcase incident, we've got body cam video of this alleged domestic violence incident response by police. Take a look.
George was hiding in the bathtub upstairs. Okay?
Yes.
So, he gave me his side of things. I need you to give me your side of things in person right here. I know we kind of talked on the phone, but I need you to tell me what happened tonight. So what happened?
Okay, well, pardon my language, because it's not me. I was called a and
okay.
And I'm not a mother to my son.
Okay.
All the while, nonetheless, I was sleeping before that.
Okay. So you're woken up to him calling you names. So you're saying?
I thought that I'm like, feed the beast, go outside and smoke a cigarette with him.
Okay.
Try to calm things down. Well, the whole time I was there saying nothing. Nothing. I was called names.
Okay. So you guys were smoking a cigarette and he was calling you names, being verbally aggressive with you. Verbally abusive.
Before that, where I'm like, I don't want to get hit anymore. So I'm just going to go downstairs and smoke a cigarette with him to try to calm him down.
Okay. So you're saying, okay, I'm trying to get a timeline of things. So start from the beginning and give me the timeline.
Was it? I was asleep.
I don't, not literal time, but in a reference of incidents, how they occurred tonight.
I was asleep, and again, he comes in and wakes me up.
He wakes you up, okay.
He's out of sorts.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure things out.
Okay.
Where it's like, don't make it worse. Just go downstairs with him. Because he gets mad at me because I go to sleep.
Okay.
I go downstairs, smoke a cigarette. The whole time I'm being belittled.
Okay.
Pardon me for saying talk about.
And then?
I walked off barefoot.
Okay, so when did he hit you? You said he hit you.
That was in the bedroom.
When? I just asked for a timeline.
He woke me up.
Okay. He woke you up.
121, you understand? Call me in a check.
By hitting you? Is that what you're telling me? Or what happened? I need you to tell me.
He kicked the door open. He's kicked the
You're adding a lot of details that I need you to be very concise with.
Sir?
When I'm telling you, I need a timeline of the events.
Yes.
How am I going to corroborate your story?
He kicked the door open. 4 times. Fourth time, I gave in. Okay? That's when I got punched in my ear. On the 4th time. Where I was like, don't do it anymore. Just go downstairs. Go smoke a cigarette.
Okay.
And that's what I did.
Okay.
And then I walked off barefoot.
Okay. And on the phone, you told me that you attacked him as well.
I didn't attack him.
You said you exchanged, you had a physical altercation on the phone. That's what you told me.
I pulled him off of me.
He said he has marks because I was fighting for my life.
I was being honest with you.
So how does this play? What does this mean? Let's bring back in our think tank, Ann Bremner, Rick King, Dave Arenberg. Ann Bremner, are you seeing a battered spouse, a battered woman in this video? And do you think that this becomes relevant in the trial?
Well, I don't know if I see it or not, Vinny. I mean, the officer seems to not believe her, at least in my estimation, but she's definitely got that defense. And she called it in and she said she was attacked and everything else. It sounds like it's happened before. So this is something that she can allege. However, he's in a suitcase. So, I mean, does she let him out? You know, does she call the police, say, I put him in the suitcase to protect myself? No, she leaves him all night, and then it's tape recorded where she's saying, I'll teach you to cheat on me, things like that. So I mean, the first case that we had on battered women syndrome was the Thacker case, started in 77, ended in 80 in Washington State, that allowed for this defense. And it's relatively new. I think it's important for battered women. The question is, was she?
Okay, Rick King, let me put this up on the screen. This is from June 15th, 2019. The Suitcase incident is February 2020. Sarah stated she was beaten up, face, head, legs, arms. She stated she begged George to stop. George stated, "You're going to die." Sarah stated that George punched her in the head, flung her off the bed. Sarah stated the incident occurred due to George being upset about Sarah talking to a male. Do you think there's going to be enough here for a battered spouse, battered woman syndrome type of defense?
I mean, I think you can make the argument based on the history of battery from George to Sarah. However, when you think about the statements that she made post when the police arrived there, talking about, and the video, moreover in the video, talking about, "You cheated on me," and then the hide and seek defense, all those things seem to undermine the theory of the defense from that perspective.
Dave Ehrenberg, something else that we've now discovered is George Torres's brother, Pharrell Torres, apparently being charged with murder. This is from May of this year, May 29th, charged with homicide without premeditation. He called 911, stated in the call, "I stabbed her in the head." He said multiple times, "I stabbed her because I was mad." Police arrived. They found Pharrell Torres's girlfriend face down on her stomach, pool of blood around her abdomen on the floor, turned to the right, steak knife sticking out of the right side of her face. That's George's brother. Does that have any relevance at all to this case?
No, that stuff's coming in, Vinny. That's not going to happen in this case, unless some jurors see this elsewhere and then bring it in with them, but that would be violating their oath. But to get what Rick was saying, I agree with him. I think it's going to be hard for her to really push this defense because her words on the video she recorded showed that she was the one taunting him, being mad at him for various things. And yes, even if he did lay hands on her, which apparently they both did to each other, you can't just go around killing people because of previous conduct. You have to be in imminent fear of your life at that time. This guy was locked up in a suitcase. She was taunting him. So I think the self-defense claim, the battered spouse defense, I think that falls flat. The only
Could she claim that if I let him out, I was scared of what would have happened if I let him out of that suitcase?
Yeah, she could try to claim that. And that may be her best defense, is to say I was drunk, number one, so I don't have the required elements of mens rea for murder, and I was worried, and maybe then you can get a manslaughter conviction. She is not walking free. She is not getting acquitted in this case, but there's a possibility she could get convicted of a lesser offense. I think that's the best thing her lawyer can hope for.
And Bremner, what do you think would have happened if she let George out of the suitcase?
Depends on when, right, Vinny? I mean, it depends on if she waited till the next morning or if she, did it that night. But I think maybe he would have attacked her, wouldn't you? I mean, if someone put you in a suitcase like that and taunted you, based on his prior behavior. So that's a good argument, basically that if he got out, he would have hurt her, and so she couldn't let him out.
Rick, are you shocked that this is going to trial, that they couldn't work something out?
Yes, I'm very shocked that it's going to trial for a couple of reasons. I'm shocked that first of all, they didn't grant the continuance. I really am. I agree with Mr. Ehrenberg on that they should have. I felt like just in the furtherance of justice and for her to fully appreciate her Sixth Amendment right to counsel, that they should have given a continuance. But I'm also shocked that there wasn't some sort of plea offered in this that was acceptable to the defense and to the state.
Great insight tonight, as always. Ann Bremner, Rick King, Dave Ehrenberg, thank you all so much. We'll see you again very soon, I'm sure. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinny Politan Investigates the murder of Hae Min Lee, the former girlfriend of Adnan Syed. Syed was in prison after being convicted, but then released when a new prosecutor had the conviction vacated. Now the appellate court has reinstated his conviction, and we'll take a look at the evidence in the case that launched the Serial podcast.
Join Court TV's Vinny Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinny Politan Investigates. Coming up next, only on Court TV.
It's the man who beat me up for 5 years.
Two celebrities reveal their turbulent relationship to the world.
Go ahead. Hit me. Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. New season premieres Sunday night, 8/7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. And a star gymnast at the University of Wisconsin Whitewater was murdered, and a suspect has been arrested. The gymnast is Cara Welsh. Cara Welsh getting ready for another year at school, another year of being a really a standout athlete and a great young woman, but she's dead. Shot and killed. The suspect is Chad Richards, a 23-year-old who apparently had some sort of a relationship with Cara and was helping her move back in. Folks at the university are really upset about all this for obvious reasons. Cara Welsh from Scripps News Milwaukee has more tonight.
I can't even imagine being a freshman coming in and this being like your first introduction to life on campus.
Shocked, saddened, and even scared. 3 words UW Whitewater students like Olivia Roth and James Justin used to describe the loss of one of their well-known classmates, Cara Welsh.
Whitewater is a college town, and you know, everybody kind of knows everybody, and everybody's linked in some sort of way. So when something happens to one person, it trickles down, and it's really sad for everybody.
Whitewater police say Cara was shot and killed in this apartment about a mile away from campus.
A lot of our community that is impacted by this is the first tragic event that they've ever had in their lives.
Ryan Callahan is UW Whitewater's athletic director. He's gotten to know Cara during her 3 years as a Warhawk.
You look back at the greats that have ever put on a Warhawk uniform or a leotard, you know, specific to gymnastics. Cara's going to be on that list, you know, one of the best ever.
Cara was a 2-time Division III All-American. She won the 2023 Individual National Championship in vault, and she went on to help lead the team to a runner-up finish earlier this year at Nationals.
Obviously, her accomplishments are what they are, but, you know, it's the fact that she was just such a wonderful person makes it even harder.
Ryan says Cara's teammates, coaching staff, and her family gathered with counselors over the weekend. Services that Ryan says are available to anyone on campus who needs it.
I think that is part of one of Whitewater's strengths, that we are such a community-based college. There's been a lot of support.
Always tough when you have murder on a college campus. Always a difficult situation. We'll continue to track this story and this trial for you, of course, on Court TV. In the meantime,